people, my name is What's It and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, we're going to be doing the part 2 video of 5 common crested gecko illnesses. In part 1, I go over 5 common crested gecko illnesses, and then today I'm going to be going over 5 different ones. So if you're interested, have a crested gecko, want to just learn a little bit more about crested geckos and their illnesses, or just bored and browsing YouTube, please keep watching. Right into today's video, the first common illness or disease that I'm going to go over isn't really an illness or disease at all. It's more like an injury of types, but it's very, very common, and a lot of people freak out when it happens to their crested gecko, and that is tail loss. Now, crested gecko tail loss is very, very, very common because in the wild, crested geckos throw their tails as a line of defense. Unfortunately, crested geckos are one of the few species of geckos that do not grow their tail back, so once they lose their tail, they're forever a frog butt. That's what they're called. Don't know why. It's because they look like tiny frogs. Well, larger frogs, actually. Ryder has no tail, so he has suffered from tail loss. Fortunately for me, and I say fortunately because I probably would have freaked out, he lost his tail before I got him, and whenever I got him from the local pet shop slash breeder that I got him from, he was already missing his tail, and I was told that he threw his tail either at a tank mate or at his own reflection or just something that scared him, and that's very typical for crested geckos. So the symptoms of tail loss are tail loss. You will notice your crested gecko no longer has a tail. Causes of it, like I said, they drop very, very easily. They can be startled, frightened, they can drop their tail while you're handling them if they're juveniles because they're like frightened easily. Rough handling can do it, like if you have a child who pulls on the tail, fighting with other crested geckos because male crested geckos especially are supposed to be housed alone, and then just like vitamin deficiencies and overly stressed crested geckos. So treatments for this, there are really none because the tail will never regrow. Things that you can do though are to prevent infection once the tail is lost. Whenever a crested gecko drops its tail, there are blood vessels in a certain point on the tail that constrict to keep it from losing blood. So as long as your crested gecko isn't bleeding a whole lot and that they are not seeming like they're in pain or struggling or have an infection, then everything will be okay. Some things you can do to prevent infection are to make sure that you clean the tank more regularly, or you remove the crested gecko from its enclosure and put it in a quarantine enclosure. What this one consists of is putting it in an enclosure with proper humidity, but on a paper towel base instead of a, say, bioactive substrate such as the one that my crested gecko is in. This will prevent infection, possible reopenings of the wound, and things of that nature. Once your crested gecko is completely healed up and feeling better, you can put it back into its enclosure or into a new enclosure if it wasn't in the proper size enclosure, and that's why it was stressed to begin with. Moving on from tail loss is another very common crested gecko. This one is an illness, and that is an egg-bound crested gecko. Now this only occurs in female geckos, of course, and it normally starts between the months of 18 to 24 months of age because that's whenever they reach sexual maturity. So some symptoms of an egg-bound crested gecko are they have a wide lower abdomen. You can feel the eggs. It's very hard whenever you press their stomach, and it's just, they look uncomfortable. They might not be moving as much. They might not be eating, things of that nature. Some causes of this are, as many things in crested geckos, calcium deficiencies, cold temperatures that don't allow them to pass the eggs, or they just don't want to lay the eggs. Sometimes this is very common in younger female crested geckos. Things that you can do to help treat this are a warm bath, increasing the temperature in the vivarium, offering more watery food, pretty much the exact same things you would do if your crested gecko were constipated and or not able to pass its stool. Those are the same things you would do if it's not able to pass its eggs. However, if you cannot get the eggs to pass, or you are fearing that it's been too long and you haven't noticed it, please contact your vet because egg-bound crested geckos can actually die from being egg-bound. It's very dangerous for female crested geckos, especially younger crested geckos who have not had a breeding season yet or who have not previously laid eggs. They may not know how, and that's why they're having issues with it. So number 3 is a kind of, I won't say common, this one is more of a concerning, obviously, illness or disease, and that is whenever a crested gecko loses its sticky or loss of suction to the glass. So a lot of reasons that this can happen. Well, the symptoms obviously are if your crested gecko can't stick to the glass, or if they keep falling off, or if you notice them like sliding down the terrarium. So the reasons for this can be some of the things I mentioned in the previous video. Stuck sheds can cause this, improper humidity due to, stuck sheds due to improper humidity. The glass can be too dirty for them to stick. I know if you have very hard water and there's a lot of water spots on your glass, it can be hard for them to suction their feet to the glass. And it can also be because they're not in the correct container, meaning they're in a plastic or PVC enclosure that they can't all the way stick to. Glass tends to be better for them to stick to and climb to. And again, low humidity and, retained toe sheds. So basically, main reasons for this are stuck sheds and sucky humidity. So if you have low humidity or the humidity is too low and they have stuck sheds, you're going to have other problems just than, problems other than just losing grip or losing their sticky. Number 4 is the opposite of one of the problems mentioned in the last video. In the last video, I mentioned how crested geckos can become constipated or have impaction. Right now, we're going to be going over diarrhea and smelly poo in crested geckos. Normal poo of crested geckos should be a solid piece that is like a white little chunk, and it has the urates, which is the urine. It comes out in a solid piece for crested geckos instead of liquid form, and it's a little yellow part of the poo, and then there should be a white part of the poo. It should all be solid to prevent water loss. So you shouldn't have runny, goopy things all over the edges of your enclosure. It should, like I said, come out in one piece, or you should see little pieces throughout your enclosure. That signifies that it's going to the bathroom how it should. Causes of this, of diarrhea in crested geckos, is it needs more hard food, so it needs more insects. And if you're going to give the crested gecko insects, make sure to dust it in calcium powder just to ensure that it gets its full amount of calcium. Stress can also cause this. Right before crested geckos shed, sometimes they get diarrhea, and the humidity can be too high. As I mentioned, it is detrimental to crested geckos if the humidity is too low, but if it's too high, it can also cause some problems, such as this one mentioned. Some treatments you can do, as I said, are feeding more hard foods, reducing the water amount in your crested gecko paste if you use a paste like I do, or going to the vet to check for parasites. If you do go to the vet to check for parasites, they will do blood work, and they will probably ask you to bring in a sample of the crested gecko's stool, and that's not always easy to get. So if you think you're going to have to go to the vet to look for that, I recommend putting your crested gecko in a tub, of course with proper humidity, but also on a paper towel substrate. That way you can properly track how often it uses the bathroom. So number 5 of crested gecko illnesses and diseases is a very important one. With all animals, this is important, but that is dehydration and throwing up. It is so rare for a crested gecko to regurgitate, so if it does, something is severely wrong, and most of the time it is caused because of parasites. Dehydration can also come from diarrhea. Like in every other single animal and human, you can become dehydrated whenever you are using the bathroom too much, and also whenever you obviously are regurgitating. So some of those causes of this, as I mentioned, are parasites. Dehydration can be from lack of water bowl, low humidity, and honestly, crested geckos don't always drink from a water bowl. So whenever you spray the enclosure, make sure to spray the fake plants or, real plants that you have in there, because most of the time they will get their water from the glass, the plants, things like that. They don't always use a water bowl. A lot of people don't realize this and will forget a water bowl sometimes. Of course, with all animals, dehydration is detrimental. With crested geckos, they are very small. Like, this is the size of my crested gecko from tip to butt. He is a very tiny creature. So loss of any water will be detrimental to him. Crested geckos really should not go without water for more than, I'm going to say 8 hours. I saw online someone said 12 hours, but I still feel like that's cutting it really, really short. Unlike a lot of animals, crested geckos can't necessarily be placed on an IV drip, so you would have to hold their mouths open and drop in a few drops of water if you suspect dehydration. Things that can be symptoms of this are lethargy, there's a specific word, it's not dizzy for a gecko, it's like whenever they move around, wobbly. They'll have the wobble, they won't be able to lift themselves, they won't be very active, and these are things that you need to watch out for, especially if they start regurgitating. Take them to the vet immediately and have it checked for parasites. So I know today's video wasn't overly long. It was a pretty long video, and I did hit all 5 points that I wanted to talk about. I didn't go too into depth about them. Again, like in the last crested gecko illness video, I hit all of the symptoms, causes, and treatments you can do for your crested geckos. As always, if you suspect that your animal is sick, please, please, please go to a vet if you think it's severe, or even if you don't think it's severe, it's always a great practice to have your animal checked out. So make sure to contact a trusted veterinarian. For crested geckos, you need an exotic vet, and make sure that you have a list of different places you can call if you suspect that your animal is sick. But as always, make sure it is a trusted medical animal health professional, not always just someone off the internet that you meet. Anyway, I hope you guys learned something, and I hope that I helped you figure out some symptoms to look for, and maybe this helped you decide if a crested gecko is too hard for you to take care of, or things you need to look for in them once you do get a crested gecko. Either way, I hope today's video was informational and helpful to you. As always, please give it a big thumbs up, please subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos. I will be doing another crested gecko video soon, so I hope you guys are excited for that, because I know I am. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and as always, thank you for the love and support. I'm so thankful for you guys. I have grown so much in the past month or two. The channel has grown, and I'm so thankful, and yeah, so can't wait to see you guys next time. Thank you for watching. Bye.